Here in Shropshire is a farm that's frozen in time. Lost in Victorian rural England. Now a unique project will bring it back to life, as it would have been in the 1880s.
Such an amazing piece of kit.
That is just tremendous.
Ruth Goodman, Alex Langlands and Peter Ginn are taking up the challenge of living as Victorian farmers for a full calendar year, from the depths of winter to the warmth of summer. They'll wear the clothes, eat the food and experience the day-to-day life of rural Victorians. They'll rear Victorian breeds of animals.
They're an unruly bunch. They really are.
That's the first lamb you've actually delivered, is it, Alex?
Hello, sweeties.
They'll grow crops.
Fingers crossed, I'll get it right and I won't look like too much of an idiot.
And get to grips with the crafts and skills of the age. This was a time of agricultural revolution in Britain. But the industrialisation of farming would wipe out centuries of traditional skills.
Go. Where are you, Alex? Good grief, young man.
Thankfully, there are a select few who still keep them alive.
And this is going to encourage the tree to fall in the direction we want it to go.
That's certainly the theory.
With their help, the team are about to turn back the clock to rediscover a lost world. But first, before winter sets in, they must restore their dilapidated farm cottage.
I've never used anything like this.
You're one excited lady, I love it.
I know, I am.
Sow crops using only horsepower, whilst dealing with the perennial problem of the British weather.
Unfortunately, it's just not working out for us today. The problem is it's just so wet.
And take charge of livestock, learning shepherding skills the hard way.
A nightmare. This doesn't bode well for the year.
They'll be getting to grips with every aspect of life on the Victorian farm. It's the 1st of September. Ruth, Alex and Peter arrive at their Victorian farm.
This is the way to travel, isn't it?
I know, it's fantastic.
Ruth Goodman specialises in domestic history. She'll run the cottage and be responsible for the dairy and poultry.
The Victorian period is a really, really interesting moment in history. It's a time of most enormous social change. There's new ways of feeding ourselves, there's new ways of clothing ourselves, there's new ways of housing ourselves, there's new ways of transporting ourselves. You know, we all base our modern living on the things that came out of this great turmoil and experimentation.
What's in this one?
Oh, this is mostly cooking.
Utensils.
Archaeologist Alex Langlands will be responsible for growing crops and rearing the animals.
It's about getting up first thing in the morning and coming in, you know, when the sun goes down. It's about spending the time outside. It's about eating fresh ingredients, growing your own ingredients. I mean, it really is about going back to a way of life that I think many people today would love the opportunity to do.
Peter Ginn, also an archaeologist, is keen to get to grips with the steam and horse-powered technology of the era.
We all know about the big events in history. I want to know about the day-to-day living within that context. There are massive changes in industry and also there are massive changes in agriculture.
Because it's such a moment of change, you've got the old and the new sitting right alongside each other. So you've got ancient crafts that are almost unchanged for a millennia, sitting right alongside a time of mass production.
Their farm is on the Acton Scott estate, which stretches across 1,500 acres of Shropshire countryside. It's been home to Thomas Stackhouse Acton's family since 1255. Mr. Acton is a Victorian farming enthusiast and has spent his life collecting old agricultural tools and machinery. His son Rupert manages the estate and will be their land agent for the year ahead.
Goodness.
Just a bit daunted.
Yeah.
You ring the bell.
First stop for the farmers is Acton Scott Hall.
Oh, hello.
Hello, Rupert.
Nice to meet you.
How are you?
Very good indeed.
Hi, I'm Peter.
Peter, nice to meet you.
This is Ruth.
Ruth.
Hello.
And Alex.
Of course, I'm
yes.
Alex,
Yes,
yes.
excellent.
Hello.
Hello.
This is little Florence.
Hello, Florence.
Little Florence
Hey,
Acton.
Florence.
She's rather shy.
In the Victorian age, this was a busy working farm with 15 acres of land.
Wow.
It was abandoned 50 years ago, but little has changed here for a century.
Oh, it's quite a sight, isn't it?
I'm afraid so.
Oh, wow, look at that.
And see whether that's
Stunning.
all the stalls.
These barns will be home to their cows, horse and pigs.
Yeah.
Needs a bit of a clean.
He's going to need a bit of a clean, isn't it?
Yeah. Home to hundreds of spiders.
Although abandoned long ago, amazingly the Victorian water pump still works.
I spent many happy hours here as a child pumping water for the cattle.
13 better days.
Above the cowshed is the tool loft, untouched for decades.
Now be very, very careful. There's a good range of tools.
Oh, fantastic.
This one is a castrating knife.
That's lovely.
I think that's definitely a boy job. And it's you know it's a milking stool. No other stool is that height. I mean, it's absolutely perfect, isn't it?
Or has 3 legs.
Or has, yeah, exactly.
There's some horse medication up here as well.
You've thought of everything.
It's not still in there.
Yeah.
The bottle's still sealed.
The 1-minute cure for gripes or fret in horses.
Oh my gosh, it's still sealed. Oh, flipping heck.
Wow. There's so much here, so much to take in.
This place is amazing.
It's almost like it was left yesterday.
Yeah. Well, okay, along slightly rusty yesterday, but...
Time capsule that we've just uncovered. With everything here, we've just got to get it back in shape.
Make it easier to get to the door.
The team will not just be farming, but also living, cooking and eating like rural Victorians.
Yes.
Interesting colour.
Rupert has found them a small farm worker's cottage, uninhabited since the 1950s.
I believe one of these keys fits this door, but I'm not quite sure which one it is. So.
You feel like you've got a key when you get a key like that, don't you?
Oh, there we go.
Ah, there we are.
Wonderful.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
In need of a bit of work, I'm afraid.
I take it this can't have been lived in for quite a while.
No, it hasn't been lived in for 50 years. Yes.
50 years.
Yes.
At the heart of the Victorian cottage is the coal range. This was the way most people cooked until the 1920s, when gas and electricity began to replace coal. It's not only essential for cooking, but provides hot water and heats the house. But this range is in a sorry state.
We're going to have to get this sorted absolutely first thing. We're just not going to be able to do anything until we've got a decent range. I mean, the rest we can live without, but we can't live without the range. I'm worried about cooking on a coal range. I've never done it before. So that's going to be quite an important thing for me, because if I can't crack it, we're going to eat horrible food all year, which is not very nice.
So, shall I show you upstairs? Show you where you'll be billeted.
Although dilapidated, the cottage is structurally sound.
No, it's not too bad up here.
I think it's pretty good.
He says. A good shot of the dead birds from the windowsill.
Right, that's it. Moving in as soon as possible.
Guiding the farmers through the year ahead is the celebrated Book of the Farm by Henry Stevens, first published in 1844.
This kind of book, I mean, it's absolutely priceless. And it gives you a breakdown about essentially everything you would need to do throughout the year. And it also gives you the science behind it as well, all types of breeds. I mean, there's literally absolutely everything here. What is most interesting about these publications, though, is their mixture of the old and the new. It often refers to sort of ancient ways of doing things, but without quite knowing the exact science behind it.
This was the Bible for farmers coming to terms with the industrialisation of farming in the 19th century.
It's also got the new as well, some of the sort of cutting-edge technology of the time. And I'm just looking here at some of this ploughing with a steam engine, with these huge, cumbersome steam engines, but seen to be, and it says here, absolute cutting-edge technology.
Turning this theory into practice will be an enormous challenge.
One of the tasks I've been trusted with throughout the project is going to be sort of managing our arable concern. It's really a part of the project where I just can't afford to fail. And of course, for farmers back in the late 19th century, it's just not an option. You know, I'm really, really anxious about it, but at the same time, really excited.
The farm has 3 acres of arable land. On some of it, they hope to grow a cereal crop, like wheat or barley. At the moment, the field's covered in grass, so first it must be ploughed to return it to bare earth. Guiding Alex is Britain's most award-winning ploughman, Jim Elliott.
Hi, Jim.
Hiya.
And who are these lovely fellas then?
This is Lion. He's an 8-year-old Shire.
Right.
And this is Prince. He's a 13-year-old Irish Draft.
And they work well together then?
Yeah, they do.
So what do you think of the field then, Jim?
Field looks fine. Quite a bit of grass on, but we should be able to plough it down and put a bit of fertility into the soil.
You're confident?
Yeah, as long as there's no big stones.
Good, I'm glad you're confident.
Gee back, Prince. Gee back. Oh, whoa, whoa. Slowly now.
This really is your money maker. This is really important, especially for a farm of our size. You've really got to turn out a good cereal crop, because that's where you're going to get your cash.
During the 19th century, the population of Britain grew from 10 million to 40 million. To feed the masses, agriculture had to undergo a revolution by industrialising. Simple wooden ploughs used for centuries were superseded by high-tech iron machines. Leading the market were Ransoms of Ipswich. In the 1840s, they came up with this, the Yorkshire Light. So great was the design, it was still being manufactured a century later.
Fantastic bit of kit, this is the Ransoms plough, and this is one of these mass-produced ploughs. What you have in the sort of earlier period, earlier 19th century, is you've still got your wooden ploughs, and they're being made in local workshops. But with Ransoms, mass-produced, and they're being sent out to all over the country. So you'd be using one of these north of Scotland, all the way down to south of England.
These high-tech ploughs revolutionised arable farming. The earth was ploughed to a consistent depth, improving the quality of the land and increasing the crop yield.
But in much the same way that you see a modern tractor.
Go on, Prince.
It's got all sorts of gadgets on it, you know, hydraulics, levers, all sorts of bits. It's very much the same here.
Slowly.
Having to adjust everything just by very, very small fractions of inches.
At the cottage, Ruth and Peter are beginning the restoration.
Oh, let's get rid of these birds first.
The first job is to clean the bedroom.
It's in a pretty neglected state, this room. The walls, the plaster's there, mostly. If we just sort of start at the top and just take it as slowly as we can down.
This has been 50 years of dust, 50 years of spiders, 50 years of an insect and animal paradise. So yeah, it's absolutely filthy. This is, I think, a much bigger job than I thought initially.
As they remove half a century of dust, the state of the plaster becomes clear.
Plaster's not as good as I thought it was. It's going to take quite a bit of...
Well, if it needs to come off, it needs to come off.
I think the more we look, the more we're finding we're going to have to do.
Downstairs in the kitchen, there's an even more pressing issue. The range.
So this is Henley Cottage, and this is our range. Don't know what you think about it.
Peter's called on Paul Arrowsmith, an expert in Victorian building.
Yes, could be repaired, but
It's a big job, isn't it?
Not worth it. It's a very small opening though. Do you need to do much cooking?
We need to do a fair bit of cooking, yes.
All right.
Oh, no, I don't know. I'm not sure if this is actually the original fireplace, because we've obviously got this here.
On the adjacent wall is evidence of a fireplace bricked up long ago. Only the wooden lintel is visible.
It's a lot bigger area, so I'm sure it goes back further, so you can get a much bigger range in.
I suppose the only way to find out is actually to get rid of some of this stuff.
The old range will be discarded and a new, bigger range installed here. Peter is hoping that beyond the rubble, the chimney will still be intact.
Henley Cottage hasn't been used for 50 years, and moreover, this is a bricked up chimney. So this is all rubble that has been used to fill up this fireplace when it was abandoned, and they moved across to there.
We've got fresh air now.
To burn, the range draws air from the room out through the chimney. But if the chimney's blocked, the air won't flow, so the coal won't burn.
When they blocked this chimney up, they've capped it with a stone so that we can still use the fireplace in the bedroom above. At the moment, that stone is lingering precariously up that chimney, so they're trying to force it down so it doesn't fall on us while we're working.
Upstairs in the bedroom, Paul's attempting to shift the offending stone.
It's coming. More of that, please. More of that. That's good.
Look at the thresh. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Okay.
Once the rubble's cleared, the chimney's revealed in all its glory.
You can see the shape tapering as it goes up to draw the smoke up. We've had a shoe come out of here and a salt hole here. I mean, these houses would have been damp, and this is one of the few places you could keep your salt dry, so it would still be granulated. We're going to sweep the chimney with these drainage rods. Well, as you can see, this is just the beginning. I think there's going to be tons of debris coming down. Got all the birds' nests out of there, and you can see daylight. Just waiting for the range now.
In the fields, Alex's early optimisms turned to gloom.
And what we're finding up this end of the field is that we've got a lot of boulders here and a lot of stones. And what's happening is the share is hitting these stones and it's kicking the plough out. If it's a bit wetter, you see, it could just roll it over.
The ground is just quite, quite dry.
Right.
We have had rain overnight, but I don't know if it's gone in.
But it's been dry for 2 months almost.
Yeah.
That's going to create real problems here, is it?
Yeah, the furrow won't want to roll off smoothly. It'll want to break in lumps. That might be our worst concern, but we'll have to give it a try.
I'm slowly losing confidence here, Jim.
No, there's no need to.
All the many problems you're pointing out.
Go on.
Alex is coming to terms with the challenges that faced the Victorian farmer.
Failure of a wheat crop back in the Victorian period would spell disaster for any farmer. I mean, it really would be a case of going from sort of struggling to get by to being broke, essentially. And you might even find yourself and your family in the workhouse. I've got to have a go myself, because obviously a farmer of my stature would know how to plough back in the late 19th century. So I'm a bit anxious here, because if I cock this up, then Jim's got a lot of work to do to rectify it.
All I want you to do is keep the furrow wheel up against this edge here. Walk on. Good boy.
Right.
Keep the land wheel on the ground.
Yep.
You can put a little bit of pressure on the right-hand handle, and that helps turn the furrow better.
Right.
As long as this wheel doesn't come off the ground, unless you'll lose your depth.
How's it doing, Jim?
You're doing fine, yeah.
Would you say?
No, you're doing. I'll soon tell you if you're not.
I daren't look at my handiwork.
It's fine.
We'll catch it on the way round.
Yeah.
It's just mesmerising watching it turn over.
No. Steady now. Good lad. Good boy.
Victorian farmers ploughed an acre a day, walking 11 miles from dawn till dusk. But the work is back-breaking. After a couple of hours, Alex is exhausted.
Go on, you're doing well. A little bit more.
Thank you.
and the dry stony ground is adding to his woes.
Oh, no, totally ridden out there.
It's just a stone. Press onto the right.
Onto the right. This is doing my back, this really is.
Oh, my father used to say that hard work never killed anyone, but it made them into gay queer shapes. So, and I suppose a lifetime of ploughing like that, you know, and out in all weathers as well, you know.
At the cottage, the chimney's clear, and 2 flues have been built, ready for the range to be fitted. Peter Parker and Steve Powell are Victorian range experts and have restored a 100-year-old model.
We're just sizing up the oven to make sure that it actually fits within the opening that's been made for us.
But there's a snag.
The flues have already been put in, and they're too far forward, which means that the oven is protruding in front of the brickwork, which is going to make it a bit of a problem.
While adjustments are made to the flues, Peter and Ruth set out to forage for fruit on the Acton Scott estate.
This is real hunter-gatherer stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this has been a staple of people's throughout the ages, for thousands of years.
It's probably why it makes you feel so good, isn't it? I mean, I always feel happy when I'm doing something like this. It always lifts my spirits.
So if you think of the toil that's put into the fields,
yeah,
in order
and then
to
this
get a
is
crop
just
to
like
grow.
a bonus, like a blessing, isn't it?
This is your luxury in life.
Yeah.
What are your plans for the sloes?
Mostly gin.
Good to hear.
Ooh, I think we've got damsons here.
This bounty of free fruit will only last days unless it's preserved. A job that requires a kitchen and a range. After a few alterations to the flues, the range is fitted and ready to be blacked.
We're putting graphite onto the cast iron. It helps protect it from rusting, and it gives us a nice sheen. And usually the housewives would do this, the young ladies of the house. I'm saying that because we don't want to get pressurised into doing this sort of thing at home, do we, Steve?
Yeah, true.
Ruth's keen to try out the range as soon as possible. But first, she needs some fuel. Ruth and Peter head to the nearby Shropshire Union Canal to collect a cartload of coal. Building Britain's canals was one of the biggest engineering projects the country has ever seen. By the 1850s, over 4,000 miles of waterways had been dug, transporting 30 million tonnes of freight a year. This Shropshire narrowboat, Saturn, was restored by Tony Lewery and a group of enthusiasts and is the last of its kind.
Ooh.
Wow, what a boat.
Beautiful boat.
The best, just the best.
We've come to pick up some coal from you. I'm just going to
Very good, yeah.
What sort is it?
The boat is a Shropshire Union boat, built as a flyboat.
Flyboat.
Flyboat, non-stop boat, meaning going day and night with changing of horses along the way. These boats were the creme de la creme, really. So they were built smaller, they were built slimmer, and they went very well indeed. So it's a very graceful boat.
Do you want a hand with the coal?
I certainly do. How many tons do you want?
Well, we've just had a range fitted in our cottage.
Well, you're going to need most of this for the winter then, aren't you?
We're going to need a fair bit,
yeah.
I mean, this stuff changed the entire world, didn't it?
It did, and the canals helped it really,
everything.
because until the canals came along, travelling coal, you know, in bulk for long distances was impossibly expensive.
Yeah.
As soon as the canals came, suddenly you could deliver 20 tonne at a time with relative ease, and they just everything burgeoned then. Industry, steam engines.
Everything. You know, we used to sort of the idea of coal changing industry, but it changes farming, it changes food, it changes laundry, it changes the way you breathe in your house, it changes everything.
But also just canals were one of the principal communication networks of Britain in the Industrial Revolution. But it also enabled farmers to move produce across Britain.
Yeah.
They're essentially linked farms, so it allowed them to specialise.
Yeah.
So they can now work.
That's a really good point, isn't it? Being able to choose, you know, which is most commercially viable. Is it better to be growing grain or is it better to be growing dairy? And whether you've got a canal or a railway in your area is going to be one of the factors that suddenly makes you make that decision, isn't it?
Because it's the industrialisation of farming in a sense.
It is.
Transportation opened up wider markets for farmers, enabling them to specialise in one product like dairy, crops or meat. For the first time, it created a national food economy. It's late September. The ploughing has taken Alex twice as long as he hoped, but finally the job's done. Next, he must decide what crop to sow. In the cottage, Peter's stripped the walls back to bare stone. Now he must learn how to plaster. And Ruth's about to light the range for the first time, under the guidance of range fitters Peter and Steve.
Exciting!
Good, I'm glad you are.
Oh, you're going to show me what
We've
you've been
had
up
it all
to.
covered up for you to give you a surprise.
Okay.
And let's hope you like it.
Oh, wow.
What do you think about that?
I swear it comes straight from the factory, wouldn't you? Wow.
So let's hope it's going to work as well.
Oh dear, I find
And
this
you're
quite...
going to do some nice cooking on it.
Oh dear. I've never used anything like this.
You look one excited
Scary.
lady. I love it.
I know, I
love
am.
it. I love to see it.
I'm terrified it's all going to go horribly wrong and I'm going to be an idiot.
No, I don't think you will be.
Well, we'll see.
Yes, I'll get the dryers.
Ruth's collected kindling and wood to get the coal going.
Now I'm getting excited now. I'm a little bit worried as to whether it'll work first time.
Here we go. Here we go and see if we... Well, those flues are obviously working.
They are, aren't they?
Oh, oh yes, that's a bit more like it.
You're happy with that?
Oh.
That looks good, doesn't it?
I am a pyromaniac. This fire's lovely and hot now, and the kettle's nearly boiling. Cooking on coal is so different. It's not something that I've done before, and I know that it has the most enormous impact on what you can cook. Wood smoke tastes nice. Coal smoke, however, tastes foul. It's sort of acidy and sulphurous. In the old way of cooking on wood, you would be almost encouraging smoke to come round your open food, but on coal, you really want to stop that. You want no smoke whatsoever, and you're trying to make sure that you've got as much separation between food and fuel.
Coal revolutionised cooking, and recipe books were rewritten for the new fuel. Roasting on a spit went out, and oven roasting came in.
I don't know that I'm going to get it right for quite a while. I think it's going to take me half the year to practice. Maybe by the end of the year, I'll be quite good.
Coal also revolutionised farming, and nothing symbolises the agricultural revolution more than this, the threshing machine. In the Victorian age, these steam-powered machines moved from farm to farm, threshing wheat, removing the valuable grain from the plant.
I'm just looking at our Bible, the Book of the Farm, and once again Henry Stevens is quick to inform us about what we should be doing here. As the incoming tenants, there'd be certain jobs that we'd have to do, and one of these is to get involved with the threshing. It says here, not unfrequently, the incoming tenant undertakes for the outgoing the threshing and delivering of the crop to market on payment for the trouble. So hopefully we'll be able to earn ourselves a few quid today.
Alex and Peter have joined a local threshing team. Tom Henderson operates the steam traction engine.
It should start to build up steam in about 3/4 of an hour. We should see the gauge move. When we get up over 100 pounds, and we've got enough to start threshing.
This new mechanised threshing ended centuries of rural tradition. Until the 1830s, the job of separating the grain from the stalks by hand employed thousands of unskilled men throughout the winter.
I've got here a head of wheat, and it's only really with some force that I can release the wheat from the husk. And when you think about this job, timeless essentially, since the first harvests of wheat to separate the grain from the rest of the plant.
These machines reduced threshing time from months to just days. Now a few men could do the work of thousands. The unemployed were furious. Farms were attacked and machines smashed. But by the 1880s, the threshing machine was a generally accepted part of country life.
The threshing machine is an absolute beast that needs feeding. So I'm just pitchforking up these sheaves and they're being put inside. It's reasonably light work, I suppose. I'm just getting to grips with this pitchfork. I've been told I look quite amateurish when I do it.
For those lucky enough to get work threshing, there were other advantages.
Well, we're cooking eggs and bacon, and I've just got the fat hot on the shovel. Next job now is to put some bacon on. Excuse my clean hand, but it does add to the flavour. There we go, that's rasher number 2. We usually get 3 on.
This is ideal.
Could be non-stick, eh?
Non-stick Teflon shovel, there we are.
There you go then. That's how you cook egg and bacon.
Lunch break over, it's time to finish the threshing.
Basically the end of the rick now. It's quite precarious because I'm just standing on metal struts with my hobnail boots on. It's a bit slippy. I feel my legs buckling.
With the threshing done, the grain is weighed.
What's the news then, Mike? Have we done well?
Very well, yes. About 2.5 hundredweight for the day's threshing,
right,
which is about 125 kilograms.
Right, okay.
So very successful.
Most of the grain would have been sold to make flour. Some would have been kept to re-sow back in the ground for next year's crop.
Do the honours?
Yeah. You all right with that? You sure?
Yes. Victorian varieties of wheat are very different to modern breeds.
Today we've bred the species so that much of the goodness that goes into the straw actually goes into the head, and wheat today actually is very, very short, you know, a couple of foot off the ground. This would grow to about 4 or 5 foot off the ground, so hopefully when we come out here in August we'll have a crop that we can just barely see over.
Before the wheat is sown, the clods of ploughed earth must be broken up by harrowing.
This is the first time I've actually ever driven horses myself, so it's absolutely thrilling. This is great fun. Now I'm going to bring them round. This is the difficult bit. Good boys. You know, really, I mean, you know, they're doing the stuff.
At the cottage, Peter's ready to start plastering. He's read in a Victorian manual that the old lime plaster removed from the walls can be recycled.
I'm just using this to pulverise the plaster into dust, and I've done about a day of this. It's quite a laborious process. I mean, it's quite hard on the upper body, but at night it's the wrists. I think it's the jarring motion. It's great to be reusing materials like this, but it's also very labour intensive.
Sand and water are added to make fresh lime plaster.
This is actually incredibly tough. The consistency we're looking for is quite sloppy. Again, it's the old adage, a bit like porridge. Pretty much all the materials we use on this farm are a bit like porridge.
There's one other essential ingredient: horsehair.
And I'm just going to put this in, and this should help the plaster bond when it's on the wall, stop it falling off. Hopefully. I mean, it's really good to experiment all these old techniques, but
God, they're difficult. And they do take time.
In the field, Alex must decide how densely to sow the wheat. Too dense and the shoots will compete with each other and die. Too sparse and the birds will eat it all. Alex is taking guidance from a highly scientific source, an age-old poem.
It goes, one for the rook, one for the crow, one to let rot, one to let grow. So according to that little poem there, we should be anticipating losing some 3/4 of what we're sowing today.
Alex has called in local farmer Brian Davis and his daughter Sharon to help. To sow the wheat, they're using a seed drill.
It's a real concern because really you wouldn't normally do this job in the rain, and we're hoping this is just a shower and it's just going to pass, but it's looking fairly ominous.
Traditionally, seed was sown by hand, broadcast.
The problem with broadcast sowing is that the grain lands on the ground and it hits the ground at different heights, and then when you harrow it over, you'll get the seed, because it's at different heights within the seed bed, it'll grow at different times, it'll be uneven, it'll mature at different periods.
The seed drill, invented in 1701 by Jethro Tull, was a major leap forward in the industrialisation of farming. This was the moment when farming became scientific. Brian has brought along a design from the 1880s, the pinnacle of Victorian technology.
The wheat in the hopper at the top, it drops down the bottom into a little trough. And the revolving cups there that you can see, those discs with the cups on, you can just see them picking the wheat up and dropping them into the little yellow containers, which then funnel them down into these tubes so that they drop out in the drill.
So the seeds are all planted at the optimum depth, increasing the chances of germination. But with just 2 rows sown, Alex's worst fears about the weather are realised.
Unfortunately, it's just not working out for us today. The problem is it's just so wet, it's so damp, the silt gets so heavy that it's just a nightmare for the horses to pull. It's a bit of a nightmare really, because it looks like we're not going to get it done today, and if this weather's set in for a couple more days, you know, we're going to really struggle to get the grain in the ground. Do you want to park it up under the trees then?
At the cottage, Peter and stonemason Paul are preparing to plaster the kitchen.
So we've each got a churn brush, and yeah, we're just going to brush it down. It's yet another dusty job on the farm. Then after that, we're going to get our stirrup pump and we're going to moisten it, which will help the plaster adhere to the wall. This is our stirrup pump that we found in the tool shed. It's pretty old. Paul and I have taken it apart and we've tried to fix the seals, because originally more water would come up in your face and it would actually come out of the nozzle. But I'm surprisingly dry and it's working very well, so I think we've succeeded. It's a remarkable improvement in the air quality in here.
It's time to apply Peter's recycled plaster.
And what you have to do is work it into the wall. Nice layer on, because once it's on the wall, we can spread it out.
Really makes your forearms ache, doesn't it?
It does. You're doing very well.
You're a good liar, Paul. I'm learning an awful lot. I'm also learning that the process has actually taken an awful lot of time. You can't hurry lime plaster. And we've got a number of coats to put on here. And Ruth's just got a range and she's quite keen to have a meal. So I don't think we're going to be finished in time.
It's mid-October. After a week of rain, the sun has returned, so Alex is back out with a seed drill, planting the rest of the crop.
So far so good. You know, this is really turning out brilliantly. 2 days ago, it was absolutely bucketing down, and now it's, you know, it's really dried off, really crumbly surface. We've got good distribution. It took us a couple of rows to get it right, but so far it's looking really, really good. It's the last thing that we need to do in here, really. I don't think we'll have to come in spring and do any hoeing, and it's the job done. And it's a relief, really, because you know, it's the first thing to do in the agricultural year, and it's one of the most important things. You know, hopefully now we're going to get a good year. We just really have to leave it to the weather, and we'll be back here in August to harvest the crop, and only then will we know just how successful things have gone.
In the cottage, the sunny weathers helped the slow-drying Victorian plaster to dry. After removing half a century of grime, replastering and repainting, it's returned to its Victorian glory, complete with a Victorian brass bed lent by the Actons.
I'm afraid it's still rather a building site.
So I can see.
The cottage will mainly be Ruth's domain, so she's taking advice. Dr. Nicola Verdon is an expert on the role of the Victorian farmer's wife.
If you read the farming manuals, which were written by men, so for example Henry Stevens' Book of the Farm, which was a very popular 19th century manual and went through several editions, and they don't mention the cleaning of the farmhouse as a task. They talk about the dairy and the poultry and the food processing and so on, but the cleaning and the laundry work and so on, which were big tasks and would have taken up a large amount of time, these aren't mentioned.
Just magically happen, do they?
Yeah.
Nicola helps Ruth tackle a much-feared Victorian pest, the bedbug, using turpentine and salt.
I always used to think the bed bugs were like, you know, like dust mite sort of things that lived in mattresses, but they're not. They're nasty.
They get everywhere.
They get everywhere. They live in any little tiny crack or space and lie dormant for months on end. And then as soon as carbon dioxide, so your breath, you know, as soon as you're in the room and you're breathing, that reactivates them and they come out and get you and suck pints of blood over a couple of months, which sounds really unpleasant.
Tackling bedbugs was a twice-yearly job. Others were daily.
And this obviously would have been one of her first tasks of the day, would be cleaning the bedrooms, making the beds and so on, alongside the milking of the cows,
feeding the pigs,
and the hens and any other small animals that are in the farmyard, and making the breakfast, obviously, and making sure the men are all fed and watered.
Emptying the chamber pots.
Absolutely, working all day, basically. Very, very little leisure time indeed.
It's late October. In a few days, the animals arrive, and caring for them will be a full-time job. By now, Peter hoped to have completed the cottage, but there's still an awful lot to be done. Ruth can't wait to use the range, so she's braving the building site with Nicola to preserve the foraged fruit.
What we're doing now in the kitchen was actually one of the main roles of a farmer's wife.
Yes, that preservation of foodstuffs.
The food processing, the preserving of seasonal food. This really kept the farm and the family and the workforce ticking over. So it was very important that a farmer married a woman who was a good cook.
Look how much fruit we gathered. We just got loads and loads and loads of it.
They're using foraged damsons and crab apples to make an Indian version of pickle, chutney.
I suppose we shouldn't be surprised, really, that so much Indian food comes into English cookery. After all, there we were over there.
Height of the empire.
Height of the empire.
19th century.
First, the fruit is slowly cooked. Then a mixture of ginger, turmeric, cayenne pepper and cloves are added.
So where are we getting these recipes from?
Well, these particular ones are from Eliza Acton's recipe book, but you can find similar ones in almost every recipe book of the period.
And these were cheap enough for most farmers' wives to have been able to afford at least one or two.
They seem to have been deeply common, and you could buy them pre-prepared.
Peter and Alex also make the most of the autumn crop of fruit. under the watchful eye of the estate's owner, Thomas Stackhouse Acton.
Still a few left on the trees. Live longer.
Every year he makes cider using apples from the orchards.
There's quite a few on the ground.
These are cider apples, aren't they, these ones?
Yes, these'll do.
All of these ones, yes? And
Yes.
it doesn't matter about these blemishes?
No, it doesn't matter about those.
Okay.
No ones which have gone black.
Right.
Well, like that one, I suppose.
That one we don't want. No.
Right, no, I think that one looks a bit past it, even to the untrained eye, Peter.
And avoid putting leaves in.
Right, okay.
With the windfall apples collected, Mr. Acton springs into action.
This is a panking pole, and we use it to shake the apples off. Mind your head.
One on the back.
I'm quite blessed. See why you're wearing a hard hat now.
Yes. Standard gear, mate.
The chutney's been simmering for 3 hours, so the stewed damsons and crab apples are infused with the spices.
Like all chutneys, this improves with keeping. I mean, you can eat it straight away, but it tastes much better after about 3 months. You sort of lose that vinegary edge, don't you? In it.
So this will be really tasty, right in the heart of winter.
Yeah. I'm sorting out the sealing of the jars, which we're going to do with the bladders of pigs. These are particularly good because they're so stretchy and watertight. I should get several lids out of each one. I don't think I've ever actually stretched a pig's bladder before.
First time for everything.
Yeah, well, yeah. So if I stretch that over, certainly as it dries, it will shrink, and then we'll get a really tight seal on it. It's not as bad to touch, is it?
It's a bit slimy.
It's a little bit, yeah, but it's only like wet rubber would be.
Ruth and Nicola are making another Indian-inspired recipe, piccalilli.
So this is the vinegar and the spices.
Ruth stocks the larder with the preserves and pickles ready for winter. As well as chutneys, she's also made tomato ketchup, another popular Victorian relish.
I'm going to let the piccalilli, which was in this one here, cool down before I put the lids on them. Actually, I'm really relieved to have finally managed to be able to get some of this pickling and preserving done. Without the range there, I just couldn't do anything, and I've been watching all the fruits in the hedgerows, you know, beginning to go over. I'm thinking, you know, I've got to move soon or we'll have nothing in here. So it is a relief.
Right, let's have these apples on the pier.
Okay. Over it goes.
The fruit gathered from the orchard will be crushed using a Victorian cider mill.
Just that bag, and that'll be enough, I think.
You think this? Right, okay.
That's enough to be starting with.
Okay. Now it's a case of getting the horse to do all the hard work. How long have you been doing this for then?
We've been doing this for about 25 years, I suppose.
Right. Have you ever had a really good vintage year?
Well, we haven't made a note of it. We just keep drinking it steadily.
What consistency are we looking for here then?
Consistency of porridge.
Right.
The boys are being helped by local farmer Merle Wilson.
Yeah.
Peter's taken Mr. Acton's usual job, steadying the millstone, but things aren't running smoothly.
Well, you're getting a bit of a build-up in here.
Yeah. Every time this stone does one rotation,
yeah,
it settles.
Right.
Now, if it's got good momentum and there's not too many apples, it'll just carry on.
Mr. Acton, you were saying that this stone, you think it might have been used for sharpening.
Probably. That's why it's got a flat on it.
It's got a slightly flat edge.
Yes.
You wouldn't think a stone wheel could have a flat, but well, I think that's what's creating most of the problems.
He seems to be making a harder job of it than you, Mr. Acton.
Well, he hasn't had so many years at it.
No, he's a lot to learn.
In the cottage, Ruth's ready to cook her first meal on the range.
I've got a leg of mutton here. You can see by the size of it. It is not a leg of lamb, it is indeed a leg of mutton. It makes so much more economic sense to eat adult sheep after you've had 8 years of cropping them for their wool. And mutton was ever such a popular, traditional and common dish for the middle classes. In fact, sometimes they're actually called mutton eaters as a sort of definition of people who were doing okay, but not great. So I'm going to take the bone out and boil it like that. Yeah, I think that's done it. Yes! Ha-ha! Right. I'll roll that up. Oh, that doesn't look too bad. Tie it up neat. I'm just going to pop him in. Yes.
The pulverised apples are ready to be squeezed for juice, using a cider press.
Winding things up again, are we, Peter? Not as much as you, Alex. Here's your first load of apples.
I don't know about you, Mal, but my hands are utterly freezing in these apples.
Thank you very much.
The pulp is loaded onto mats, known as hares.
This cider that we hopefully make is going to be kept, it's going to be used for our hay harvest as a means of giving to our workers, our labourers. And quite often the quality of your cider would be something that would attract labourers to your farm to do the work. And the farm would also keep back a batch for himself, and he'd probably have some rotten stuff for people he didn't like Alex.
Fuck, it's going to end up on your head.
The stack of hares, known as a cheese, is put under immense pressure to squeeze every last drop of apple juice from them.
And we're just bringing the beam down to press it. Great stuff. Just compressing the cheese, and we're getting all the juice out, all the apple juice.
Such a lovely colour as well, isn't it? Keep it going. It's getting really hard now.
Juice coming out.
Pleased?
Very pleased. We've pressed this as much as we can now. It won't go any further.
The juice is stored in casks, where it'll be left for the next few months to ferment.
Should start fermenting in 5 days. You have to top it up regularly, sort of every day, because otherwise the air gets in and you get impurities in. So we need to top it up with pond water or stream water, basically water that hasn't come in contact with metals.
The last job of autumn's done. Just in time to greet the arrival of the first animals. 10 Shropshire ewes. Bred in the 1840s from local wild sheep, they're famed for their excellent meat and wool. But the boys' shepherding skills are put to the test almost immediately.
One of our newly arrived ewes split from the flock and has come into this garden.
Any sign of her?
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Could have sworn I saw her in here. She's up there. Alex?
Yep.
Found her.
You get behind her.
Easier said than done. It's pretty thick up here. Oh no.
What a nightmare.
There's a gate. Has she gone through?
This doesn't bode well for the year.
Oh no.
Ah, I think all those sheep over there have seen her.
Yes.
She's in the field.
The runaway sheep has joined a nearby farm's flock.
Yeah, these fences are pretty low.
Well, a 90% success rate there.
Richard Spencer, a sheep farmer of 40 years' experience, has come to give some much-needed advice to the novice shepherds.
The one thing you have to remember, you guys, when you're sort of getting settled down with this flock of sheep, every shepherd knows a sheep is the only animal in God's creation looking for the quickest way to die. You can do everything right. Yeah. You can do everything right, you can all go pear-shaped, you can make loads of mistakes. If Mother Nature's with you, you'll come out smelling of roses. It's just, That's the way with Mother Nature and livestock, you just got to accept it.
If the ewes are to produce young, they must be in tip-top health. Richard's checking out the field where they're to live.
Well, young man, it's a good thick turf. It'll carry the sheep come winter, this will.
Yes.
It'll take some weather. You need a good turf to carry livestock in winter.
Right.
If it gets wet and you haven't got a solid turf, there's nothing to carry the weight of the sheep, but this will be fine. This will be fine, this will.
And I've read about flushing, which is where you put them into good pasture, and then because of their improving condition, they're more likely to conceive twins, essentially. Is there any basis of fact?
Oh, absolutely. It's fact all the way, because very basically, if the sheep is bursting with energy, she's had all this lovely lush grass, she's going to shed more eggs, she's going to have more lambs.
OK, so we're doing a good thing here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Bringing them into this type of grass.
Yes.
In a few days' time, once the ewes have settled into life on the fresh pasture, it'll be time to introduce a ram. Hopefully, come spring, they'll produce plenty of young. It's time to move into the cottage.
It's very kind of the Actons to lend us these chairs.
Yeah, well, whatever you do, don't break them.
Try not to.
And Ruth's first meal, cooked on the range, is ready.
This smells absolutely delicious.
What are we having?
Boiled mutton. You couldn't grab a plate, could
Yes,
you?
yeah. Right in here, shall I?
Oh, there we go. Oh.
Are you OK, fella?
Could you help me?
You really that stuck?
My arse.
Went straight through. Oh, no.
Oh, no. Look, you'll have to use the clun chair. Which isn't much better, actually.
How do you think it's gone then so far?
It's more work than I thought it was going to be, getting this all ready, quite obviously.
Yeah, the building work on top of everything else.
Yeah, but that's like modern builders, you know. They always come in, yeah, it'll take a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
You know, 6 weeks later, you're still waiting. So, you know.
It's starting to look good. Yeah. It's starting to come alive.
Yeah, the good news is that we are ready for our animals. Just.
Peter, Ruth and Alex sleep elsewhere on the estate, but with the bedroom finished, Ruth can't resist spending the night here.
I've got my chamber pot if I need it in the night, and I've heated a brick on the range and wrapped it in a cloth, and I'm hoping that this will warm the bed up a bit, act like a hot water bottle. And then I'm going to get in on my lovely feather mattress that I've cleaned and stuffed earlier. Ooh, that feels rather nice, actually. Better not actually be any bed bugs.
Next time on Victorian Farm, building pigsties.
We've had snow, we've had rain, and it's just so cold.
Back-breaking laundry duty.
And it's flipping hard work.
A new arrival to get to grips with.
How am I doing then?
You're doing very well.
And a Victorian Christmas to look forward to.
Happy Christmas, everybody.